April 25th, 2022, Matthews Board of Commissioners meeting. I'm Mayor John Higdon. I'd like to start with some introductions. To my left and your right is Commissioner Renee Garner. Next, we have Commissioner Larry Whitley. Commissioner Ken McCool is out tonight. Town Manager Becky Hawk is here. Town Attorney Charlie Buckley. Commissioner Mark DeFano. Commissioner Gina Hoover. Commissioner John Urban. Our Town Clerk Lori Canapino, and our Communications Coordinator Maureen Keith. We're going to have a regular, relatively short meeting tonight comparatively to recent meetings. And so I'd like to start by telling a very quick story of something that happened to me yesterday. During our last meeting, my face was swollen a bit because I had been stung by a bee, as you recall. So I had another encounter with wildlife in Matthews last night. That's kind of interesting. My daughter was home from Washington, D.C., and it was right at dusk, and we were cooking some chicken on our grill on my back deck, and so just talking. And it was just about dark, and I heard the loudest thumping noise, just like something attacking my air conditioning unit, bam, 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 bam. I'm like, what the, just really loud. And it was kind of dark. So I told my daughter, go see what that is. And she said, I don't think so. So I had a flashlight, and I walked around the corner of my house and hear this loud sound coming out of my air conditioning unit. And I see the tail of something flipping around with the fan. That wasn't good. So I quickly, asked my wife to turn the air conditioner off, and a snake had decided to go across the top of my air conditioner and fell into the fan. And it was getting his head beat against the side. And he didn't make it, and my wife wouldn't have made it if she had seen that. But my daughter, who's a wildlife biologist, removed the remains of the snake. And she told me it was a baby rat snake, about 18 inches long. But all the great things that happen in Matthews with wildlife. I live along 4 Mile Creek with a wooded lot next door, so get a lot of different animals creeping up into my yard sometimes. All right, please, if you care to, join me in an invocation. Dear Lord, we thank you for the opportunity to come together this evening and ask for your blessing on this meeting of the Matthews Town Council. Even though each of our unique opinions and life experiences will influence our desired resolutions to the issues we will consider tonight, please give us unity of spirit. Lead each one of us so that we can make meaningful and fruitful contributions. Help us to remember to respectfully listen to others as they share their points of view, even though they may be different than our own. Make this room bright with a spirit of camaraderie as we work together in our shared mission for an even better Matthews. Thank you, Lord, for helping us to complete the important work that lies ahead of us this evening. Also, we ask for your healing grace for our colleague, Mayor Pro Tem Ken McCool. Please grant him a complete and quick recovery from illness. In your holy name we pray, amen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice. All right, we're going to move on to agenda item number 4, presentation from Mecklenburg County Assessor's Office on upcoming property reevaluation from Assessor Ken Joyner.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, board members, town administration. My name is Ken Joyner. I'm your Mecklenburg County assessor, and I appreciate the opportunity to come tonight so that we can share some important information on the work that is being done right now as we head towards the January 1, 2023 revaluation. I think this is probably around 8 years since I was here the first time as we were embarking on the review project in the wake of the 2011, and was back again as we were doing our information sessions for 2019. So again, thank you for the opportunity here tonight. The 2023 revaluation is well underway. It is a large undertaking, especially under the circumstances of the last 2 years, where our office was actually shut down from field work, which is so important when anytime you're dealing with real property, for about 7 weeks one time and for about 5 weeks another time. So luckily we've been able to keep up with all the new construction and work with your manager and your previous manager on those budget estimations. And now we're heading towards the 2023 revaluation. Tonight, I've got Brad Fowler, our assistant assessor over real property. Brad's been with us now for almost a year. He comes to us from Catawba County. He was the tax administrator there. Prior to that, he worked in Durham County as the assistant assessor. And prior to that, he was our commercial real property manager. So we're glad to have Brad back, as we had to fill a very important vacancy, and his skill set matches exactly what we need. So I'm going to call Brad up. He's going to walk you through the presentation, and then at the end, we'll both be available to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ken. And as Ken said, thank you all for having us. Make sure I've got the clicker down here. Okay. Okay. So as Ken said, my name is Brad Fowler. I'm the assistant assessor here in Mecklenburg County. We have a presentation tonight. Don't want to give you all an update, talk a little bit about what a revaluation is, as well as our progress that we've made thus far. So the first thing that we get asked all the time at community meetings that we go to is, why do we do revaluation? North Carolina General Statute 105-286 says that we must conduct a reappraisal or revaluation at least once every 8 years. Mecklenburg County, following the 2019 reappraisal, decided to advance that cycle to a 4-year cycle. So from 19 to now 23 will be our next one. The reason that we have advanced that cycle, there are a number of them. The main three are that the value and assessments will stay closer to one another. So we're not seeing that sticker shock that we would see from, for instance, from 11 to 19 that we saw. Also, to keep the public more educated in the process, we do a lot of community engagement. We'll talk a little bit about that here in a brief bit. And then that bottom part, once again, because we're staying closer to that market, it just keeps those market increases or decreases. It could be, I guess, not as wide as you typically would see in an 8-year cycle. So the purpose of a revaluation is fairly simple. It's to redistribute the property tax base, creating those fair and equitable assessments. As you all know, areas of Mecklenburg County, whether it be here in Matthews, it will grow at a different rate than maybe a Uptown or Cornelius. And so we want to make assessments fair and equitable for everyone. We also see that across property sectors. Residential property will grow at different rates than commercial property. And so once again, when we reestablish these values, it will reset that to make those fair and equitable assessments. Values and assessments are updated to current market levels. Okay, so that's the purpose of a revaluation. It is in no way a means to raise property taxes. As you all are well aware, once we set those property tax values, it will be this board's job to set the rate for Matthews based on your budgetary needs. So the progress to date, there are currently 396,851 parcels in Mecklenburg County. We expect that number to be over 400,000 by the time we get to January the 1st of 2023. We typically have between 4,000 to 6,000 parcels added per year. So far, 353,000, or approximately 89% of all property in Mecklenburg County, has been through the initial review period. Revaluation is a very iterative process. It is not something that you just one time go through it and it's done. It's going to take a little while. So we will go back through these as we get closer to that January 1, 23 date. This is just a map showing you that progress that has been made. Everything in dark blue on this map is residential progress that has been made thus far. Everything that you see in red on the map is commercial progress that has been made. Over on the right-hand side, it shows the median sales price of $376,120. That is for single-family residents here in Mecklenburg County. That is also just based on what we have through 2021. That does not include any 2022 sales at this point. So that number is probably a little higher. Currently, our assessment to sales ratio is 99.6%. Once again, the goal is to be at 100% of market value, and so pretty close to the goal there. But those numbers are changing as we continue to advance towards that effective date of the reappraisal. Neighborhood delineation. Talk a little bit about some of the important things that we do in the office as we are preparing for revaluation. This is probably one of the most important. Neighborhood delineation is really, for simple terms, is just breaking the county down into various neighborhoods. It's just to make sure that properties of like kind and like areas are being compared. So we're not comparing something here in Matthews with something in Uptown, for instance. It's just once again, keeping those market areas manageable for our office, but also maintaining that fairness and equity that we talked about a little bit earlier. Other important feature is the sales qualification process that our office conducts. Each year, we receive all the sales that occur in Mecklenburg County, and it's our staff's job to go through and qualify those sales. What we mean by qualified transactions are those that are arm's length between a willing buyer and willing seller. We're not looking for foreclosed transactions or between related entities or something of that nature, just looking simply for those qualified transactions. Mecklenburg County typically has around 25,000 sales per year, as you can see, looking back. And in 2021 has probably been our biggest year that I know of anyway, at 26,478. And we have just now started receiving the 2022 sales. Works through some of those, but just kind of got into that process during the first quarter here. So we'll talk a little bit about some of the other things that are going on, be communications and some of our different committees that we have. The biggest one is our Citizens Review Committee. This is a 9-member panel appointed by the Board of County Commissioners, a highly qualified group of individuals. They are giving a copy of the general statutes and then started work this March and will conclude their work in December. You can go ahead and next one. The purpose of the group, they have a huge job, to be honest with you. They review the overall operations of our office. They look at everything from statistical data to the different appraisal methods that we use. They monitor our progress. We give them updates on progress as we're going through this and ask a ton of questions, I can tell you from experience. So it's a really good group to have to just kind of, it benefits us. You know, it benefits the community, but it also benefits us to have that outside look from some other folks. And ultimately, they will report to our Board of County Commissioners any findings. Communication has become key to our office. Starting in 2013, when Ken came on board here, this was kind of put at the forefront and has only been enhanced as we've moved through each successive year. Our communication plan at this point, this is just a screenshot of our 2023. It is very comprehensive. It includes everything from speaking engagements like tonight to billboards to radio advertisements, whatever it might be about the revaluation, all included in there. And so it also includes our revaluation brochure. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. This is just a kind of a quick look at that. This is the same exact revaluation brochure that we used in 2019. I'll tell you that just before this meeting, in an earlier meeting we had today, this has been revamped. It's going to be the exact same information, but it's been revamped with just a new look. So we'll start distributing those out soon. One of the things that we have added is the QR code here on the back, just an easier way for folks to scan in with their phone and then get to our website as well as tonight's presentation. Here are some of the meetings that we have conducted so far. We started our meetings last September, and you can see that they just kind of trickled in at first, and now this is what Ken calls our traveling road show. We are on the road about every night, it seems. So We've done quite a few meetings, really clicked up in March and in April, and May is starting to fill up all the same. Here are our upcoming meetings. Obviously here tonight in Matthews. And then we do have Davidson and the city of Charlotte left. All the other municipalities have been visited at this point. We fully intend to come back to the municipalities, obviously, as we get closer to that revaluation date. This is this slide just to show, which is kind of what everyone knows at this point. The Charlotte real estate market is extremely hot at the moment, and has been for quite some time. Realtor has ranked it as the third hottest in the United States. So we are seeing values that we've never seen before. We've seen have seen sales prices that we've not seen before, and it's happened very rapidly over the course of the last couple of years. Technology for our citizens is also key to our office. We've had a lot of this in place for a while, just kind of continue to grow it and make it a little bit better and more efficient. This is our property record card search tool. You can go on this website and you're able to punch in either your address or if you have your parcel ID by chance, or even your name, and you can search for your property. Once you key in that, you would see a map of the property, its location, as well as a picture of your home. Down at the bottom of the screen, there's a lot of different things that you can look at, from land values to building values, any value changes that have occurred. But the one thing that I always direct folks' attention to is on the right hand keys down there, Comper. This is a tool that has proven invaluable, in which citizens can go in, click on that, and they're able to see comparable properties in their neighborhood that are used in the valuation process. And this helps them to understand where that valuation came from. It could also obviously help to soften some of the appeals once they can see that, because a lot of the appeals that we get, it's just that it's questions about, well, how did you come up with this? That's able to show them a little bit easier if they go to this website. And this is just a screenshot showing you what that property record card looks like. It gives you a sketch of the property as well as structural elements associated with that property. Those includes things like square footage, bed, bath count, things of that nature. And this is a picture of the Comper screen that I just referred to. You can go ahead and go to the next one. That's a blown up version of it. Just kind of shows you what that looks like. It's something that folks who have purchased a home and looked at the appraisal for that home, they've probably seen a grid format that looks something very much like this. It shows you both your home as well as some comparable properties used, and the square footage, things like that associated with each of those, so you can see how they compare. Modria was our 2019 appeals module. We have taken that down since following the 2019 revaluation. We are in process of bringing it back up. We've done that to basically just to change some things around, more for internal uses and trying to help us out a little bit. But it is a great tool for our citizens. It allows folks to go in, file an appeal or an informal review. They can chat back and forth with an appraiser on staff, and it just makes things a lot easier all around. Every time that we go out, and I think it's the one thing that Ken and I are the most passionate about in all this property tax stuff, is our relief. We are in the property tax world. We're constantly asked what is available for relief. I can't afford to pay my taxes, that sort of thing. And so unfortunately in our office, we are kind of stymied with what the state offers. As you all know, taxes can't be abated in North Carolina. And so we're limited to these couple programs, but we always do like to highlight them and to give you all some idea. Both of these, the application period for any folks who may qualify, the application period is January the 1st through June the 1st of each year. And the first one is our elderly or disabled exemption program. This has an age and an income requirement associated with it. You have to be 65 years or older. You cannot make more than $31,900 for the preceding year. So for instance, if you applied for this program in 2022, you could not have made more than $31,900 last year. You also obviously have to be the owner of the property as of January the 1st. in the year in which you're going to apply. Next is our disabled veterans. There is no age or income requirement on this one. You do have to be the owner as of January the 1st. You have to be an honorably discharged veteran, 100% disabled to receive the benefits. That's really all on that one. You get excluded $45,000 of the assessed value in this program. I should have said on the last slide as well, the elderly exemption program basically cuts your taxes in half. Okay, it takes half off of the assessed value. So in essence, it's cutting that tax bill by half. If you know anyone that would qualify for this, we definitely want to talk with them. We'll do anything we can to get an application in their hand. Even if they're late, we have mechanisms in that application. We have mechanisms in place where we can work with them to try to get them approved in one of those programs, because we want them in that if they so qualify. And then finally are just a few key dates. Obviously, the community engagement, the Citizens Review Committee we spoke about. We will be finalizing our values in December, late December of this year, with the notices of value going out in late January. As soon as those valuation notices get to folks in their hands, that informal process begins, informal appeals, that is, so they can certainly file appeal if they feel that value is in error. And then by May, the end of May, we haven't set a specific date yet, our Board of Equalization and Review, or that appeal period, will end. And then finally, those new assessments will be reflected in the bills that you would receive July of 2023. And so with that, I'd be happy to take any questions that you might have.
Commissioner Garner.
Thank you for your presentation. I had the honor to hear Tiffany and Candace speak this morning about present use value. And they mentioned the homes program. Can you tell us a little bit? I mean, just tangentially, they mentioned it. It wasn't really a part of their presentation, but can you tell us a little bit more about that and how people will find out about the homes program when the reval comes through?
Yep, sure. So the homes program is actually handled by the Community Resource Center in Mecklenburg County. And so folks would need to contact and work through them in their office. It allows for, and it's a sliding scale, the amount of income that you can make in that program. And it allows for up to 400 and I think it's 475, give or take, dollars off of the tax bill for an individual. So not something that we administer, but you can definitely reach out to them.
And there's no age requirement on that.
Oh, no.
It's a grant-based program through the Health and Human Services for the county.
Commissioner Tufano.
So are you able to give us a sneak preview on what the increased percentage is going to be?
Not at this time.
With the initial reviews right now, we're going, sure. With the initial reviews that we're doing right now, we're basically establishing our neighborhoods and making sure that we've got all of our other factors in place. That final review, because any sales or any values that we put together right now would probably not reflect January 1 of 2023. So we go through that initial review, set up those neighborhoods, and during that last 5 months of the year is when we're trying to go through and really determine what values are. We're seeing them escalate right now at levels that I've never seen in a 29-year career, from 21 and on into 22 so far. So we can't get too far ahead of that, or we'll have to go back and replace that work that we've done. So that's why we plan to come back in the fall, probably October, November is when we'll try to do our visits back out, where we have some good ideas of where everything is heading, because I know that Matthews, along with Mecklenburg County and all of our other municipalities, will be starting that budget process once the first of the year gets here, or at least that planning stage. So we want to at least help you be out front and start that process.
So from the length of your reply, it's going to be bad.
Well,
No,
It-
I'm
yeah.
joking with you.
Oh, I know
It's-
I know
it's-
you. I know
it's,
you are.
You're actually basing it on sales. So we can expect quite a considerable increase based on that.
Right.
So, and so anyway, thank you. And you answered my other question in your reply, and that is it's going to be calendar year 2023. And so when will our residents be receiving their new assessment notices?
Towards that last week of January of 2023 is when we expect to mail those. That'll give us that time to get that last quarter of sales in. And then that gives us the opportunity to work with them prior to that formal appeal process and in advance of the fiscal year beginning in July and those bills going out.
And your last one was 2019.
19.
What was the median house sale value in 2019?
It was, I want to think in the upper 200s is where we were at, 276, around 276 back in 2019. So we're already looking at a median price of just the sales, about 100,000 more.
391. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
So you guys are certainly the experts, but I've heard from watching television that when interest rates go up, maybe it'll tap the brakes a little bit on the ever increasing escalation of house prices because people aren't going to be able to afford the loans. So.
Well, believe me, as the assessor, it would not bother me to see that increase begin to slow down. You know, I agree. You know, we do our research. We talk to the county economist and others, and I do believe that with the interest rates, we will start to see some slowing. But I think the larger problem right now is the lack of supply in the real estate market. You know, you go back to the last slowdown, we don't see the speculative homes built anymore that was a part of satisfying the needs of the market. And so now we're talking, you know, custom construction or buying something that is basically already completed. So it's just a different dynamic that was that change back in probably 2008, 2009 when all that ended.
Right. Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Joyner. Mr. Fowler, we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank
Very
you.
informative. Thank you. Ask the town manager, do we have any items to be added to the agenda tonight?
No items to add, Mr. Mayor.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. Anyone who's registered in advance can speak first, and we do have someone signed up, Krista Terrell from ASC. Welcome, Krista.
Good evening. Good evening, Mayor Hickton, Commissioners, and Town Manager Hawk. My name is Krista Terrell. I'm President of the Arts and Science Council. ASC is Mecklenburg County's local arts agency, and we work every day to invest in people, programs, and ideas that move us toward a more equitable, sustainable, and innovative ecosystem. I am not here tonight to ask you for money. Want to make that clear. We've given a letter to Manager Hawk, and I'm sure she'll share that with you when you start your budget discussions. But tonight I'm here to simply just say thank you. Thank you for your support of ASC and our work and the investment that we're making in individuals and organizations of all sizes that we represent. And tonight, I want to share a few of those experiences with you, upcoming experiences. And I also want to thank you for your thoughtful appointment of Commissioner Gardner, as well as Jennifer Stone Carroll on our Southeast Advisory Council, because we're working with them to address and assess the needs of Town of Matthews residents in their community. And so thank you for your support, and we'll jump right in. Next slide, please. So we're also happy to share with you ASC's full list of our 22 investments this year. But again, tonight I want to highlight just a few examples with you of events that are coming up here in Matthews. First, as Dr. Shah shared with you at your last meeting, the Regional Festival of India in Matthews will take place this Saturday at Stupton Park from noon to 6 p.m., featuring dance performances, visual art, cultural exhibitions, and family activities. This event is driven by your active association and partnership with the India Association of Charlotte. But I'm proud to also share with you that the Arts and Science Council has invested in the India Association of Charlotte and the Festival of India through our Cultural Vision Grant Program that supports programs that help build community and build strong communities and connects us with one another. Next slide, please. Also, Culture Blocks partner Dapper Street Productions is currently presenting The Color of Jazz, a live jazz, soul, and blues music series taking place at Matthews Community Center's Fullwood Theater. The upcoming Thursday, May 19th performance will pay tribute to jazz drummers, and the Thursday, June 23rd performance will pay tribute to the great women in jazz, soul, blues, and music. Another established ASC Culture Blocks partner, the Purple Charlotte Steppers. Oh, next slide, go up one more. That one, no, one more. Yes, right there. So on your right, that's okay. You see the Purple Charlotte Steppers. They're offering weekly dance programs for Matthews residents on Mondays from 12 to 1 p.m. at Cruz Recreation Center. That's happening now through June 29th. Through the midday soul line dance series, the Purple Charlotte Steppers celebrates the rich history and beautiful art form of African-American soul dance through community members to various genres, including Detroit ballroom, Chicago stepping, Dallas Fort Worth, swing out, and soul line dance. Next slide. So we hope that you'll be able to join us in the community for these and other cultural experiences that are happening around the town of Matthews. And please don't hesitate to reach out to myself or a member of our team should you have any questions. So again, thank you for your meaningful support, for your partnership with ASC and investing in our work to ensure that we're serving everyone across Mecklenburg County, including the town of Matthews. Thank you so much.
Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve consent agenda item number 7A through D2. Thank you. It's a pleasure.
It is. It is. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mayor, Town Board. As Manager Hawk updated you 2 weeks ago, we still are having concerns about location of the construction entrance for the Stumptown Veterans Memorial Park project, looking at the risk of using the lawn as the access with the upcoming events scheduled post July. So we have not seen progress in securing the construction entrance from the labeled Exxon lot. And where we are at this point is call it the safer bet or the best course of action is to postpone the construction to January through March of 2023. Really no action requested tonight. Just really wanted the verbal acknowledgement of the plan and any feedback that the board may have. So conversations I've had with the project manager is they're willing to sit at the table and talk, but they don't have the permits in place. They don't have, I guess, an updated schedule for their project. So they really couldn't give us the access without knowing their schedule. All right, and one other note, I will share, staff, I do plan to apply for a grant to help support the project. It is the T-Mobile Hometown Grant, which is up to $50,000, so pretty significant. There's no cash match required by the town if awarded. So it does not commit money other than, I guess, just commitment to the project. And I just want to share that.
That's great news. Thank you.
Oh, and also, I'm sorry, happy Playground Safety Week.
I'll remember that when I'm on the seesaw. Okay, let's go on to 8B, consider downtown crosswalk painting. Mr. O'Neill.
Thank you, Mayor and Board. Hope everybody's doing well tonight. Hopefully we'll be out of here in a few minutes.
Going quickly.
So I'll read this line by line to try to help that out. So one of the commissioners had requested that we look at refreshing all the crosswalks in kind of the Trade Street corridor, taking a look at the condition that they're in, as well as whether they're up to our current standard for that area, which is the ladder type crosswalk, has 2 bars on the sides and then the 24-inch parallel lines. We went through that corridor. There's 35 of those through there. We had asked a company come out what it would cost for them to do all the crosswalks that cross Trade Street. I think there are 17 of those, and it came out to roughly $63,000, $62,300. We then went back, and if you can go to the last page, we evaluated each of them to see what we thought we would like to do. A portion of this will be resurfaced by the DOT, hopefully within the next couple of months. So obviously we don't want to do those now and have them taken up and redone. So our recommendation for those is to wait and evaluate it once it's done to make sure they are up to our standards. There are several of them that we are capable and do on an ongoing basis of refreshing. So that's what we'd like to do with those. And then there are certain intersections that are really just too busy with the traffic for us to have the personnel to do that safely, the traffic control. So those we would like to hire out a contractor to do if they need them. So that the major corridors where we look at a contractor doing, or major intersections, are at John Street and Trade Street, and then at 51 and Trade Street. The majority of the rest we should be able to do ourselves. The one at Fullwood and Trade is busy, but they're in good condition. So we don't think they have to be done right now. So really all we're asking at this point is for us to go refresh the ones that we're capable of doing, waiting until the DOT is done with their project, and then reevaluate it and address as needed.
What is the actual process that you use to refresh? I mean, how do you do it? You put a stencil down, or?
So for most of them, and it depends on the condition they're in. Most of them, what we do is go back over what was there, and we use a traffic rated paint. It's halfway between a regular paint and a thermoplastic, and we throw down reflective beads on top of that. So it's not quite as nice as tearing it up and redoing the whole thing, but it's much quicker, much more cost effective.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Tofano.
Thank you, by the way, for putting together this extensive list. It's very good. A couple of things. The cracks, they're quite deep in some of them. Do you fill those in before you repaint?
So typically the paint will do a pretty good job of filling it in. It won't bring it all the way level, but it will fill up the majority of it.
Thanks. And the intersection of Trade and John, you have all 4 crossings as part of the NCDOT program. Are they going to actually go? It says all 4 of the north, south, east, and west of on the Trade and John. You have after NCDOT project, evaluate contractor. So is the one on the north side of John Street, crossing Trade Street, is that anticipated to be part of the repaving?
No, so what happens is when you repave, there's a lot of tack that they put down to put the asphalt, and they'll tend to track that
I
across
see.
what's there. So we want to wait, and we're assuming that that will probably track across what's there already and would have to be redone.
I see, thanks. And where is the repaving actually going to start? Right at the south side of John Street?
So it should start at that intersection on Trade Street, right at where that crosswalk is, and then go to Main Street.
And are we still on schedule for spring of this year with NCDOT? They gave us a commitment, correct, Susan?
They gave us a tentative commitment.
Oh.
They, the way they do their projects is they have what they call maps of projects, and they let those maps of projects, but it's up to the contractor as to order they want to do them. The DOT has requested that be done earlier, but they can't direct them to do it earlier without having to pay the contractor, because contractor will say, well, that wasn't my normal order, and it's going to cost me X amount of dollars to schedule this around and reposition everything.
And assuming we vote for this plan tonight, when would you begin?
So we've already started refreshing.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
In anticipation of your approval.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We'll have to remember NCDOT's phrase there, tentative commitment. That's about as wishy-washy as you can get, I think. Commissioner Garner?
CJ, thank you for this list. I have a question, and my concern about this, as we've talked about it all along, has been jumping ahead of other projects that are in the queue. And so do you know when the turn lane, I think is a Fullwood Station? No, I don't know.
The median?
Yeah.
Yeah, that goes into Fullwood Station. We should just get started on that Thursday.
Okay, great. Soon. So, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
That's great, because we have had some community feedback on that. Any other questions or motions to move forward with this plan?
I would like to make a motion that we move forward with the plan as stated by our wonderful Director of Public Works, CJ O'Neill, as stated.
You have to put all those adoring phrases in there, Lori.
Yes.
Do we have a second? All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Tufano, a second by Commissioner Whitley. All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you,
And
CJ.
can I thank Susan and Life? They really did all the work on this. I just gave it to
Susan and
you.
Life, great job. Let's move on to the next item, 8C, review cost estimates and anticipated bond schedule for potential general obligation bond projects. Ms. Hawk.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This agenda item, for the benefit of the audience, is a bit of a continuation from the discussion that we were having with the board at our 5:30 meeting this evening. But the costs that we have in front of you tonight are the updated figures related to the most highest prioritized projects within the transportation bond category, as well as the parks and recreation facilities bond category. As the board will recall, they were originally kind of zeroing in on approximately $20 million in transportation projects and about $10 million for parks and recreation facilities. As you can see by the totals up on the screen, the cost estimates are coming in a little bit higher than that. So if you could please scroll down just a little bit to the next page. Again, it's really just trying to open it up for some discussion tonight. The board has some options regarding how to proceed. You are not obligated to make any decisions tonight. And as a reminder, you're also not obligating yourselves to move forward with the bonds, period. This is really just to start to help coalesce around how you might want to move forward. You'll be making those more formal decisions at upcoming meetings. But the options based on the updated cost estimates would be to either remove some projects, reduce the scope of some of the projects, either increase the total amounts requested for each GO bond category or plan to fund any of the cost differences via other means. To date, we have only committed to actually obtaining those cost estimates, and then the board hired special bond counsel to help you through this process as we move forward. So we are looking to have the board take a resolution of intent vote that will be at your second meeting in May. Again, just discussion tonight. If there is clear direction, we're happy to take it, but otherwise this can also go on future agendas.
So I'd like to begin the discussion. I spoke with Becky after our 5:30 meeting, and from my perspective, first of all, I'm very thankful to the town manager and her staff to do this exercise so that we know what the real cost is, and we don't promise our constituents one thing and then come up short on funds to be able to complete the projects. Secondly, we saw that a couple of the projects were laid out in a more complete and I think a higher quality way, like the loop that Susan showed for us, the Matthewstown loop. And so I think our citizens expect us to do things in a quality manner and with quality construction and done right and not done in a way that's we're going to regret later. So from my perspective, if we're going to do a $30 million bond in total, or bonds, or 33 or 34 or 35, it's I'm in favor of going for the higher value and complete all these projects. We've already pared our list of projects down significantly, and the ones that we have left are ones that our citizens are really asking us to do. So I would be in favor of raising the bond amount. That's where I stand on it. What others think? Commissioner Tufano.
So I want to be absolutely clear that this will force a tax increase.
So when a general obligation bond is placed on the ballot for authorization by voters, we are pledging our full faith and credit. And so what that means on the bond market is that we are promising to not default on the bonds up to and including raising taxes in order to meet that debt obligation. Looking at the anticipated debt obligations for these totals, we would expect that we would be raising taxes to make that debt payment. So we don't expect that there would be natural growth that would be able to cover this debt. So we anticipate, and what most communities do if they have a successful bond referendum, is they will just go ahead and increase taxes the corresponding amount. So as you can see up there, we expect that if $30 million were to pass in order to make that $2 million annual debt service payment, we would be looking at approximately 3.2 cents in order to make that debt service payment. But that would be determined once that debt actually came due.
This could be a question for you or maybe from Charlie. Is it required that when the issuance of a bond that we also tell the public what the cost to them will be in terms of raising their taxes?
I'm not aware that that is correlated. It's only through the budget ordinance itself and the budget process to determine the tax. It will determine future debt service, but you don't, because of the time you issue these bonds, you have no idea what the budgets, future budgets will be, whether there will be necessitated to have a tax increase or not. It is projected that this will have a tax increase, but it's not required to tell folks, but you don't know yet.
That is correct, but definitely it will not reduce taxes. So what I'm trying to get at is it required or shall we say proper for us to inform the public that along with the bond issue, that there will be a tax increase?
So what I would speak to with that related to the public information process and what we've seen a lot of other communities do is they're very upfront about that. Of, we are looking to issue X millions of dollars in bonds. We anticipate that it would have X impact on the tax rate. And then They'll have, information of if your home is worth, 200,000, 300,000, 400,000, what that anticipated impact will be. So understanding that it's not locked in, but it is what is projected based on the total bond issuance if it passes. And Maureen's been doing a great job starting to pull information together in anticipation of moving forward with this. And that is a key component of the information that we would be putting out to the public.
Well, I'm in agreement with the mayor in terms of go big or go home sort of thing. And but it's also important for me to know that the public is going to be properly informed about what this cost is going to be to them. Total transparency.
Yes, I think that definitely will be our goal. I'm hopeful that folks don't believe that, we can do all these things at no cost whatsoever. But I think the beauty of a general obligation bond is our citizens have made it well known that they would like to see Purser Halsey develop sooner rather than later. And that's, millions of dollars, upwards of $9 million to do the complete build out that we expect. We simply do not have the ability to fund that right now unless we get some additional funding. Same thing with mobility improvements, parking improvements, transportation improvements. Our citizens are demanding these things. And the beauty of a general obligation bond is we don't decide, the taxpayers decide. And if our taxpayers or our constituents say, no, we don't want to do that, we want to keep taxes low, we don't necessarily want these items done, then they can vote that manner and we won't do them. So it's really not up to us. It's up to our constituents to decide. And that's the beauty of this whole process from my perspective. Any other comments? Given my speech, anybody else?
Mayor, I agree with you, and I think it's long overdue. I know probably about 3 years ago, we talked about a bond, and sort of pushed back, but these items that's on this bond referendum is significant. It's something that's almost a must. Transportation, like you say, we had Purser Hall Park for many years, and the only thing we given the people was a dog park. And we got the trail there, but I think they're looking for something that the whole town and the community could be very proud of. And certainly the master plan of what we've got there, I think the citizens, and Martin, speaking to you, I think people become familiar now that if you're talking about a bond, they understand that tax is going to go at some point. You can't tell them what it is until, as Charlie said, until we get to that point. But I think the citizens will be willing to make sure that we got these roads improvement and these parks and mobility parking, especially parking. And I know everything on here is very significant. So I support the mayor in going up to make sure we get all this done at one time and not have to piecemeal and come back. Let's get the citizens to vote. And it's a job for us as commissioners to sell this to our constituents and let them know these are improvements that's going to take place in our town. And I think they'll be receptive to it. That's my take.
Well, let me also say that from the memo, and Becky, correct me if I'm incorrect, but the debt service that you mentioned would only occur if we issued all of the bonds, 100% of them, which we likely wouldn't do. We previously approved bonds in Matthews and never issued them at all. So I mean, that's if we issued everything, correct?
That is the full issuance, and issuing it at one time. So we do anticipate that we want to move as quickly as possible because obviously we're fighting against cost escalations. Right. But all of that each bond issuance would come back to this board for individual approval before we move forward. And we would not want to take out the entire debt until we were able to spend it quickly. So it is possible that it would take a couple of years to be able to fully issue everything.
Can I ask commissioners that haven't weighed in to please weigh in so staff has an idea of where we stand as a board? Commissioner Urban?
If you're talking a transportation bond of 20 million plus or minus and a Parks and Rec bond of 12 point something plus or minus, I'm fine.
Commissioner Hoover, do you have any thoughts?
No, y'all know I've been kind of vocal against this because I'm just more concerned with everything. We're at a 40-year inflation, and then we just heard our possible taxes going up, and that's on top. I get it, I understand. I've always heard big bonds mean big taxes. So, and I know the people vote, so yeah, it's up to our constituents, and there are things on there I like and would like to have done. True. I'm having just a hard time with, I'm having a hard time with that, to have to ask people to have their taxes raised, but what we decide as a board, I will support, so.
Thank you. Mr. Garner, did you give an opinion?
I always have an opinion. I support going up to the 35 that was mentioned, giving some wiggle room for prices not being exactly as they are planned now. But a lot of these items that are on this list, I would say, I don't know that there aren't any that haven't been things that have been talked about for a long time, but we have just kept pushing back and pushing back. And yeah, it is nice to have a low tax rate, but that's the reason that things aren't getting done. Giving it to the people to have a chance to vote on it and support it or not support it puts us in our place, right? And so
Absolutely.
it's up to us to listen to what their wishes are. And I think, and this is a great way to do it.
And these will be two separate votes, correct, Becky? So there'll be a transportation and a Parks and Rec.
That is correct. They are divided. So, both could pass, both could fail, one could pass, one could fail. And we've definitely seen that in some communities where maybe one is approved and the other isn't. Mr. Leo with Parker Poe will need the specific breakdown if we are at 35 of how much is transportation and how much is Parks and Recreation. So I've heard a couple of different things. If the board could perhaps, if you're ready to settle on tonight, is it 20 and 15? Is it 21 and 14? I'm going to start losing my ability to do math here, but how would you like to divide the 35 if that is the number that we're at?
If I could ask one more question. In transportation, can someone remind me why we don't have road improvements of the existing roads that we have? I know that came up for discussion once.
Sure. So CJ ran the paving analysis to bring all of the roads up to the 80% level that was requested. And that total was $27 or $28 million. The plan right now with reval coming in FY24 is that we do intend to propose a budget in FY24 that includes increased annual funding for our road improvements. And based on CJ's analysis, he felt confident that that would provide sufficient funding to be able to maintain the roads. Was it in their present condition or was it 75%? Sorry, I don't have that in front of me.
Yeah, no problem. And I apologize for not having gotten that to you yet. Becky reminded me Friday and I hadn't quite gotten it. So the funding that we are at currently should keep us in about the same level that we are in for the next 10 years at least, with a slight improvement around years 9 and 10. So that's where we are right now. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I asked the question more for the general public to get an answer. And so thank you very much for that.
And we'll get you a more detailed response this week on your original question on how much it would cost to bring them to 80 and keep them there over the next 20 years.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I would like to suggest, based on the current slide that's up on the being presented, that we do 21 million for transportation and 13 for Parks and Rec for 34 million total. And again, I want to reiterate, and several commissioners have spoken to this, that we want to be 100% transparent. I commit that we will be transparent. I think Becky and I are in lockstep of doing that, showing exactly if both of these pass, what the cost would be to the average homeowner, et cetera. We intend to be fully transparent, so our constituents can make informed decisions when they vote these up or down.
So Becky, I just want to make sure that these numbers are totally padded with the anticipated inflationary rate. If we're not going to do all these at one time, we're going to get really eaten up by the inflation over the next 2 or 3 years. So help me mitigate that.
Sure. So the numbers up on the screen are based on a 2024 construction, which if the voter referendum is in November of 2022, that would allow us to be doing planning in 2023, execution in 2024 to have the construction dollars. You are, of course, like we talked about, looking at a 5 or 6% escalation every year thereafter. So you're exactly right that we would start bumping up potentially to the maximum amount the longer that it is delayed. So the 13 million and the 21 million, you have a little bit of room, but there's not a lot.
That's why I suggested those
Mhm.
numbers. It lives a little bit, so I don't even know the feasibility actually, and we may want to ask CJ and Susan, some others in the room, and Corey, but the feasibility of doing all these projects immediately in 1 year may just be overwhelming for staff. We may not want to do that because we don't have enough heads to make that happen. So it may have to be done over several years.
So
And-
if I could just ask again, just to be sure, these are 2024 dollars.
That's correct.
Okay, so theoretically, if we do a few of them sooner, we could save some moolah.
This is correct.
Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
We do also, in our budget forecasting model, we are hoping that we will be able to fund a project manager to come on board in FY24 as part of that budget that would allow for some project administration assistance. And I believe some of these cost estimates do also have some project administration built into them to allow for where that's just going to be beyond the capacity of staff.
Okay, thank you.
Any other thoughts on 21 and 13?
You need a motion?
No, I don't think so.
Other than the optic of a 13,
12,999.
it's all about branding.
I'm in agreement with that.
You guys are what? Unlucky 13? Really? Okay. We need to give staff some direction. So if you don't like the numbers of 21 and 13, or you don't like any numbers, let's speak up, please.
Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, since we had 35 in our minds, why not go there? I mean, we had originally been given those two options, and I
Well,
believe,
that gives
I believe
additional
35.
padding for the 5 to 6% escalation.
Actually, I think 5 or 6% is quite conservative. I think it's going to be over 7 or 8% this year alone. So I would like to suggest that we go to the 35 and split it accordingly to its ratio with its current ratio.
I think, well, I think it may be easier for folks to wrap their head around if we have whole numbers instead of 12,800.
Correct.
$122.39 or whatever. So
Correct.
if you're suggesting 21 and 14 for 35 total, you can go along with that as well.
I was going to say 22 and 13.
Okay, well,
Yep,
yeah.
because I think in the transportation one is the one that's going to cost us because there's a lot of contracting work in there.
The transportation category, any multi-use path has some interesting flexibility where you can use either the Parks and Recreation dollars or transportation dollars to fund a multi-use path. So just keep that in mind that if you ended up saying not having quite enough for the Matthews Downtown Loop and the Parks and Recreation facilities, and you had a little bit extra in transportation, you could use transportation bond dollars to fund that project as well.
Mr. Mayor, are there any objections to 22 and 13?
Not for me.
What was the number?
22 and 13.
Staff is knee deep into this thing. If they want to tell us where they think it's comfortably be at, I mean, I just, if I had my druthers, I would do in multiples. I'd have transportation at 24 and Parks and Rec at 12, because then someone's looking at that dynamic of whole solid numbers, proportion, et cetera, from that aspect of it, or a 22-14, but it's just 13, just such an odd number out of the box.
We need to cut off discussion because we've already gone up to 36 now.
Yeah, that's the whole thing.
We need to-
So does Miss Manager have any thoughts? Because this is a branding exercise. This is how you sell it in the numbers, and all numbers have a play.
I would not do 13. So I would go with an even number for Parks and Recreation facilities, either 12 or 14, and then split the difference on the other side.
Okay.
In that case, I would favor 23 and 12.
I would go opposite and favor 21 and 14. So.
I'd go 13, 13, 13, 13 cents.
What was yours, Renee?
Why don't we leave it at this? I think there's a
21 and
comfortable,
14.
I'm hearing a consensus of this board that they can coalesce around the number 35. Let's leave it up to staff to divide it up between these two, however you think is best. So we don't have to do it as a rush, knee-jerk reaction. Some people apparently don't like the number 13. So we'll just leave it up to staff to decide those numbers and make them come out to 35. And I think that gives us a little bit of cushion. And again, this is an exercise for our constituents. If they don't favor this and don't want to do it, then they'll let us know and we won't do it. Right? So it's that simple.
Happy to bring that back to the board.
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the honest and talk there.
Thank you.
9A, new business, consider proposed Stumptown Station Parklet, Nadine Bennett, via Zoom.
Yes, thank you for allowing me to zoom in. Actually, that's not my presentation up there. I don't really probably need to share mine. Yeah, that's going to be it. I just wanted to give you some quick background. You actually are going to have somebody speaking to you tonight who wants to build a parklet downtown. I'm sure you all remember that during the kind of the thick of COVID, downtown Matthews, we had outdoor seating in the public right of way. It was very popular, I believe. But once things started to ease up, we removed the barriers and that took away the outdoor seating. So in October of 2021, the town board adopted guidelines for a Matthews pilot parklet program. And you've probably all seen parklets. You probably remember the presentations. We now have someone who actually wants to build one downtown, that's Stumptown Station. They have sent us a preliminary design and we've looked at it. We like it. The town engineers looked at it. She's spoken to them about safety issues and a few other issues. The issue right now, though, is they kind of need a feel for how long they can have this parklet. When I was doing some research on how much these cost, especially for one that's going to look like what you want it to look like in downtown Matthews, it can be up to $20,000. And in our parklet information, we say it can be 6 months or possibly longer for a semi-permanent installation. And 6 months just isn't enough time to spend $20,000 to put in something that really fits into downtown Matthews. So before they move any further with their design and respond to some of Susan's comments about safety, they just kind of want a better idea for how long they can keep it there. And so I think tonight you're not approving a parklet. I think it's really just a discussion with them about what they're showing, how long they need it to be there, and their thoughts on it. And if you could go to the next page. There's actually a, there it is. So some of the research that I did in other communities, there's not a lot of information out there, but kind of the minimum that I saw was a yearly application, but it was renewable for most part with no limit. And then there are a few of them there that had 3 years and then you reapplied. So most of them are looking at longer term if you've got a semi-permanent structure. For the fees, again, it was kind of hard to find information, but the application fees are not very high. Charlotte's $150, Tulsa $13.75. In some cases, there's a deposit until the parklet is cleared out. So that just gives you an idea of what some other communities are doing. And they are here. I believe we have someone here tonight, and we have somebody over Zoom as well, who can talk more of the details about what they want to do and what the design is going to be.
Nadine, can I ask a question before we move on to the other presentation?
Sure.
Do you have any concern about equity issues from other businesses saying, I want a parklet? Why? Because obviously we can't put parklets all along down the downtown area. So is this just based on this particular applicant has an interest in doing it, is willing to spend $20,000, or?
I think it really is this particular applicant. I mean, the parklet program, again, it was adopted in October, so there's been a lot of time for other people to express interest. And these are the only people that we've heard from.
Okay, fair enough. I just want to make sure that, we're doing this equitably, that if others, because if.
And I believe Jay and I talked about it just briefly about alerting the other downtown businesses that this will be happening and getting their feedback as well. So we wouldn't just spring it on them one day that, oh, look, there's a missing parking spot and some tables out there.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So hopefully you have somebody out there now.
Yes, this is Lisa Cutshaw from Summit Design and Engineering. I just wanted to briefly give an overview of where we came from with the concept. So we knew from the Parklet program literature that the goal of the program was to retrofit the existing infrastructure to provide more urban open space. And we saw from your mobility and parking study that you really want to create a more vibrant, unique, and walkable space here downtown for residents and visitors to enjoy. So if we look at, this is Stumptown Station itself, and the parking lot directly in front of, sorry, the parking space, not the lot. Parking space directly in front of Stumptown Station is the one that we're interested in utilizing. It's got this striped space behind it, so there's a bit of buffer, so you're not completely surrounded by cars if you're in that space. And the current existing conditions are, there's a 5-foot wide sidewalk in front of the building, and then you step down through a planting strip to curb at street level. So if we go to the next slide, what we'd like to do, oh, sorry, page 2. What we'd like to do with the design, if you see here in the bottom left corner, starting from the existing building, you've got that 5-foot wide existing sidewalk. The concept proposes to use probably a wooden deck to create a flush condition here at the sidewalk and extend out into the parking space to really widen that space and give more gathering space to it, seating space. People could be out here standing and talking, sitting to make a phone call. You know, it really depends on what time of day, what that use would probably be. So the idea is, if we look in plan view over here, again, we've got the existing sidewalk. We come to the widened condition where we've got our wooden deck, and then it's surrounded by a bench and then with a kind of protective planter around it. So you have that feeling of enclosed space. You don't sit there feeling like you'll be hit by a car or something like that. So it feels safe, it feels comfortable. The planting softens everything. And really, there's quite a bit of flexibility in this design because there are so many different ways people could be using this space. It could be for sitting out here and eating or sharing a drink, or, you know, during the day, if there isn't a lot of use from the business itself, then it's easily a place where the public could choose to come and sit while they rest, talk to their friends, think about where they want to go shopping, all that kind of thing that we do on a normal day when we're on the sidewalk and we have a nice bench to sit on. So that's the overview of how we came up with the design itself. And we have, as Nadine mentioned, we have been in contact with the planning department and the town engineer. So we've got a pretty good idea of how we need to detail this for safety concerns. But I do want to turn it over to Bobby Klein, the owner, one of the owners of Stumptown Station, to address the lease questions. And Bobby, I believe, is there in person.
Mr. Klein?
Oh, do you mind changing the page? First, I'd like to say thanks, Mayor and Commissioners, for taking the time. And secondly, I'd like to say I apologize. My hearing aid broke and it's not in yet, so I missed most of this whole meeting. So if I repeat something here, I apologize. But basically, I think what Nadine said pretty much covered everything that I was going to point out here. It's just the actual cost. I mean, we're probably looking at a minimum of $16,000 to get this going. And with about probably 2 months of construction, we're looking at 35 months to break even on this thing. And originally we talked about putting a lease on it. And if we did, we're probably looking at even $150 a month lease. We're looking at, 50 months to break even on this. So we certainly don't want to need to make any money on this or whatever, but we'd like to not lose a bunch of money trying to do something like this to expand it and make it look nice out front and more inviting to get people to come down and hang out. We love the idea. We think it's great. Ever since John and I had a talk about it seems like years ago now, but before we go any further, we just wanted to make sure that this was feasible. If it was a possibility to get an extended lease to 4 years or at least 3 years around there to get that going. And if there is an expense, to just try enough to accommodate it. And if we take a little bit of loss on it, that's fine too. But overall, we just don't want to, before we go any further, we don't want to get creamed with this if it's going to be a 6 month or a year thing. That's all. And that's it. I think that's it. I think Nadine covered the rest of it maybe better than I even did. I mean, she did a lot of wonderful research. Thanks, Nadine, if you can hear me.
You're welcome. And again, we in the planning department, we do like the idea.
I have a few comments. I think I've mentioned in a few of these meetings that my son is a student at NYU in Manhattan, and they have these type of parklets, several times per block all over Manhattan, all over New York. And I do recall during the height of COVID, when you had your space there, I remember on more than one occasion driving in front of your establishment and actually rolling my window down and just hearing people laugh and having a good time, and just how vibrant it was. And just, I think having people outside at Grace O'Malley's and your place was just made you like, wow, I want to go, I want to be in Matthews. This is a cool place to be. It's vibrant. It's fun. So I certainly support this. And I think, I don't know about a 36-month lease. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks, but I think at least a 2-year lease makes sense. 6 months is kind of ridiculous. I agree. That's, I understand your concern there, but I would like to see at least a 24-month lease. I don't know what others think. Commissioner Tofano, do you have a comment?
First, I was going to ask, how many would you anticipate seating in this parklet?
I'm sorry.
How many would be seated in the parklet?
Well, it's good. We're trying to leave it open. We're probably planning on putting 2 tables in there or moving it around. It's handicap accessible, and we're just going to line it with benches out there. So kind of more of just a gathering area rather than actually a seating area. So depending on the crowd, we'll put tables out there, but we don't expect it to be, because there's not going to be any real entertainment out there. We don't expect to be a full standing crowd. It'll kind of be like a parklet. So it's kind of a relaxed setting atmosphere with the benches around there and maybe 2 tables. So maybe a dozen at the most, but that I can't imagine much more than that.
I was hoping more. Yeah.
Me too.
Yeah.
Well, let me say one thing. It's certainly the expectation on these type of things that I've seen in other communities is, although Ms. Cutshaw said that sometimes they're used for the general public, I can imagine if you're paying for this thing, you want your customers to be in there, not the public. So it would be used by others, maybe on a Sunday or something. When you're not
anytime. I mean, we're going to keep it, it'll be lit. We'll have it lit from, sundown to sun up. We'll keep it clean and open. So if,
you're okay with people that aren't your customers?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Oh,
I would
great.
encourage it, to be honest with you.
Wow.
I mean, it's going to be sitting higher. It'll be elevated up. So you'll be looking up into it as you're driving by. And we want to make it more than aesthetically pleasing. We want to, put all kinds of landscaping around the outside of it and make it look, very nice and inviting. So yeah, we would encourage that. I mean, anything out there is going to only look better for us and the city. So I think, yeah, absolutely.
I know it's a personal preference, but I will say those lights like that are shown in the illustration look really nice.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, ultimately, we'd like to incorporate, an ivy in there as well. So yeah, we're want to make it look really nice.
As long as they're hung 6 foot 5 inches or higher, they're really nice. Commissioner Urban.
Hey, how are you going to get the power out there, Bobby?
Well, that's a concern we talked about. And we don't know. There's a light there, street light right there that we were hoping maybe we could tie into with a photo cell on it. If not, we just run one power from the bar.
We won't talk about Duke. Charlie, let me ask you a quick question. If the town was to build one of these things, would it fall out of the tourism fund? If you're using it to promote downtown?
I think that's a stretch.
Okay.
Let's let him visit Bobby's establishment for a little while.
It's not connected to an event.
Well, no, I'm just wondering, because in Mooresville, we're doing the reverse.
Yeah, it's not an event.
The town's building them. And one owner of a building is building it at their cost. They're going to let it sit there for 2 or 3 years, recoup their costs. And then when they're done with it, the town is going to recoup it and use it elsewhere, and they're going to build other ones.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways to skin the cat, because if you had half a dozen of these things and you, as the town, leased them because it was part of improving the downtown, that's one thing. But I guess the only other question I have for Susan and CJ is, from a traffic standpoint, I don't know how this is constructed, but I know the ones that we worked on basically had roll cages inside. So they're like light steel frames clad with wood. So if something hits it, the whole thing moves and doesn't give way. I mean, has there been some thought to that, or is that all left up to the design individual here?
Yeah, Susan's coming up. I know a lot of the ones in New York actually have bollards inside.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, is it's got to be resistant to a vehicle. And we know how some of our folks are on that particular road.
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you. And I did kick that back to Lisa and the design team, both in that. So it is a low speed movement. So fortunately, that space is quite protected because it's right at that right turn lane. There's nothing behind it, right? So not only the impact on the approach, but also I asked Lisa about the impact on the back up movement, because there's a parking space right in front of it. And I can see lots of cars trying to parallel park in there and backing up till they smash into it. And then going, oops, and pulling forward again. So we did kick that back to the design team. You'll see in here, and I don't know if maybe Bobby wants to talk about this, but those are planters. So that's actually like dirt and planters in there that will provide some structural support. So I'm not sure the whole thing will move, but definitely we talked about impact safety.
Okay, I mean, it's a fascinating project from the standpoint of all the little pieces and parts. I don't know how it gets permitted in Mecklenburg County, but they're not in Iredell. As long as ADA is met, then that owner is compliant with that. That's fine. So I'm be interesting to see how this falls out and how Charlotte falls out with them, because in New York, I think they go willy nilly with them. They're constructed in all forms and fashions, and I think there would be some liability on our part if we wave the magic wand and then something was to happen. So I just wanted to make sure you guys were intently looking at it. But I mean, I think it's a great way to activate the street.
To answer the first one is that once we get through all this and we already have a builder that's in plan for it. We originally wanted to make it so that it is movable, so we could collapse it down, maybe even be able to throw some wheels up underneath it and transport it. So for future use after this, that's a great idea. So we might incorporate that. Like, obviously we want to keep costs low, especially if the lease is low. But that might be an idea for future routes. I mean, we could turn it into a float for the parade, annual parade or something like that. But to answer your second question, there is a loading zone behind this. So this space is parallel with the road, with traffic. And right behind it is a loading zone. And then behind that are semi-perpendicular, like 45-degree angle parking spaces that run in front of Gracie's. And I'm sorry we don't have a picture of that. We did have one before, and I forgot to put this in there. But yeah, so it's kind of, as traffic's coming back, when it kind of dips in right at the beginning of the turning lane. So, and it will be elevated above street level, because I believe there's 3 from road there's 3 steps up to the sidewalk, and we're going to build it up to the sidewalk so that it's handicap accessible, you know, even with the sidewalk. So people will be elevated up. And then of course, the pergola style will be elevated up and lit. So even if you're coming down the road, you'll be able to see it over top of all the parked cars. So it'll be highly visible.
Yeah.
And then I mean, after talking and going back and forth, if we want to have it collapsible or movable, we're open to building it any way that, you know, that we can afford.
Well, it's got
Whether
to
we
be,
put
it's got to be
concrete
efficient for you.
barriers
I just,
behind it.
we're worried about the concerns of the safety, and I see the island sort of striped right there. So if someone did inadvertently hit it, but lately I've been seeing people use those parking spaces as a right turn lane. If there are no cars there, they'll use it as a right turn lane from that aspect of it. That's, I just want to make sure it's covered and make sure Bobby's covered from that standpoint. I agree with the mayor. We need to be pushing that interim out further to make it more viable from that aspect of it. And I guess it just needs to meet certain regulations. So if code enforcement, whatever says, Bobby, you're using it out of the context of what we're trying to do here, we terminate this. I mean, just to be fair, but I'm sure you, as being a good citizen and your partner and all, you'll be fine.
One comment for the board and then a question for Bobby. I would just say, keep in mind that if you do move forward with the bond and the streetscape improvements pass, you might be looking at an impact on the lease term. So just something to keep in mind as far as if there's any ability to do, you know, loss of use or something, if we needed to terminate that lease early because we were coming through with massive sidewalk improvements in that area. Just want to make sure that we don't
I would love that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's an alternative to this. So
Sure.
it's basically the same thing. We're just switching something out. So again, that'll help us out in eating costs as well, knowing as soon as this gets removed, we're getting replaced with something else. So that sounds great. That's great news as well.
Sure. And the question for you, Bobby, have you investigated the extension of your ABC permit in a post-COVID world? As far as, do you have any issues with the fact that you would be crossing the sidewalk into this area?
No, the ABC just wants to make sure, first of all, that we're covered with insurance and liability. So, and we talked to our insurance agent and they said yes. So that was their biggest concern. The rest is going to be policed under everything else as if it's part of the establishment.
Mr. Buckley.
Just one quick thing. Let's change our mindset from calling it a lease and let's call it a license. I think that's significant.
I'm sorry?
Just let's call the document a license, not a lease.
Okay.
This is for the board, everybody's concerned, but let's change that terminology.
Okay.
Let's don't call it a lease. Let's call it a license.
Mr.
Sounds
Willie.
good.
Commissioner Whitley.
Yeah, for lighting, you might want to think about putting a solar. You ain't got to worry about connecting solar light, those lights around.
I'm sorry, Commissioner, I can't hear you.
A solar lighting on top of the.
They are for sale, exactly.
The lights?
Exactly. Those lights, solar are for sale now.
Oh,
Solar powered. Yeah.
yes.
Good idea.
Yeah, because I see them a lot around town on stop signs. And so that would light those lights for their.
Well, then that would solve that.
Yeah, right.
Exactly the same shape.
Yeah.
Street.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. Happy to be your design consultant. No, that's a good idea. Thank you, Commissioner Willie. Are there any other thoughts about this? I think at least a 2-year license would be reasonable. Does anybody disagree with that? Or do you want to go 3?
Yeah, 3.
How about a 2-year with a renewal of 1? I mean, because this is the first one out of the box here. I get that. And ultimately, I don't think it'd be an issue, but someone else is going to come down the pike. They're going to see this and they're going to say, we want to do the same thing.
I think a 3-year, and that give him opportunity to recoup some of his money. 2, I'm good with 2 and another year extension.
Everybody okay with it?
The terms are the reason why I want it changed from a lease to a license, because you don't have to worry about whatever the term is. It is.
It is what it is.
It is what it is, unlike a lease, which has regulations on terms.
So what do? Just run year by year by year and you don't?
Well, no, I'm just saying, because like a lease up to 1 year doesn't require a public hearing, but if you're going to go from 1 year, 1 day and between that and 10 years, then you got to go through a public hearing process. So let's just call it a license and not even worry about leasing of property.
That's why we have an attorney up here.
So you're saying a license for 3 years? Is that how the terminology is?
Well, like, yeah, a license. Yes, sir, a license. Let's just call it a license, whatever your term that you're going to recommend.
Mhm.
I think I'm
And
hearing.
of course,
a
we
con-
could, we're wide open for voiding it as soon as the cityscape comes in, whether it's 6 months or, whatever the term is.
Why don't we, I think the consensus of the board is 2 years and after 2 years, we'll reevaluate and maybe consider another year, another 2 years or whatever, but 2 years initial with 1 year is what we're thinking about tonight. And I'll ask the town manager to put, or the attorney to put some verbiage in this license agreement that lets us ask for it to be moved if there's suddenly a streetscape improvement that requires it not to be there. Sound good?
That's it. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Mr. Klein. Let's move on to item 9B, receive the monthly budget report from Teresa Falk.
Thank you. Excuse me. See what happens when I have to wait so long. I can't even talk. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the board. Once again, you have in front of you the financial report, and this is through March the 31st, 2022. And we are still having a very good year as far as revenues. Our ad valorem tax revenues are actually up 8.18% year over year. And local option sales tax are still trending very high, and we're at 18.5% higher than the same time period last year. Occupancy tax revenues are 67.63% higher year over year for the same time last year. And rental car tax is 28.36% higher year over year. So the people are coming back to Matthews and they're spending the night and renting cars and shopping and eating in the restaurants, which is a very good thing.
Fantastic. Another great report. I was commenting to my wife this past weekend, we drove through downtown Matthews on a Sunday and there must have been a couple thousand people walking around. And I just, for those of us that have lived here a long time, it's just unbelievable almost that there's this much vibrancy to our town. And so those people, I suspect, are buying lunch or dinner or having a drink or whatever. So that's great. Any questions for Teresa? Mr. Urban?
So Teresa, I think I talked to Becky a little bit about this. Obviously, you're using this as an anomaly. You're not going to come in preparing the budget going, oh yeah, we're here, cash cow, let's do it again. What year are you looking back towards to sort of more common sense?
So it's not so much looking backwards to previous years so much as using additional data points that we have for future projections. So we love what's happening right now, but we do understand that this is not going to last. So as we're preparing the FY23 budget, we're using a 5% increase for FY23, which would allow for a significant slowdown in the market, and we would still be able to make those projections.
Thank you.
I think barring a recession, which could happen, but this is kind of the new normal. I mean, we're seeing significant crowds here week after week after week after week, and more business people, more car rentals, and it's
right.
Anything further?
Thank you.
Thank you. On to item 9C, consider foregoing reimbursement of general fund balance expenditures for acquisition of real property.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The memo that we have in front of you, just for the benefit of the viewing audience as well, it outlines a bit of history that this board and previous boards have taken where we have acquired 4 properties over the last few years for various purposes that total just shy of about $2.4 million. And when each of those purchases was made, the plan at the time was to make the purchase out of our general fund balance, and then we would be seeking reimbursement at a later date to essentially replenish our fund balance and then make debt service payments in order to spread out the payments over time. At the planning conference, if you'll recall, Commissioner Tefano raised an excellent point related to this, which was, is it really the most prudent use of town funds to be making those interest payments, just to either have the funds sitting in our fund balance, or if this board or a future board wants to, say, make additional property acquisitions, you would then be taking on the debt just to maybe turn right around and spend it again. So long story short, staff went back and started looking at that and running some scenarios to really just kind of ask the question of, is going out and taking on that debt necessary at this point in time? And so as we looked at what we are projecting to return to the general fund balance at the end of this fiscal year, we feel confident that we are able to remain in compliance with this board's fund balance policy of maintaining at least 34% unassigned fund balance without having to go out and take on that debt to replenish our general fund for these purchases. This would be non-binding at any point in time. If the board changed its mind, whether it was next board meeting or 4 years from now, we would be able to go out and take on this debt and replenish the fund balance at any time. But given that we are able to maintain our fund balance without doing it, it felt like a prudent exercise to bring it to the board and, run this alternative by you to ask the question, is this board comfortable at this point in time based on our projections for how much we expect to be putting back into the general fund at the end of this year and being able to maintain that fund balance? Is this board comfortable pausing on that plan and potentially foregoing it forever, but to not go out and take on that debt that will save us significant interest over the repayment terms. And it will also, quite frankly, it will save us having to fund a debt service payment in the FY23 budget, as well as future budgets, which we are happy to put those dollars to other use. So happy to answer any questions. Certainly thanks to our finance director, Teresa Folk, for running these scenarios and pulling this information together, and just happy to either answer questions or take direction.
Mr. Tefano.
Since we, I think initially voted to replenish the fund, is a vote required now to reverse that decision? Yes.
We need to vote on this item. Are there any other questions, comments, or motions? I would just like to say, I think this is being smart stewards of our money, and to take loans out just to replenish our fund balance seems kind of foolhardy. And I think our constituents might ask us why we're doing that. Doesn't make a lot of sense. So this seems like a smart move to me. Would anybody, any comments, questions, or motions?
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this policy of not reimbursing the general fund with debt service as presented.
For these 4 purchases.
For those 4 purchases.
Thank you. We have a motion from Commissioner Tefano. Do we have a second? Second. Second from Commissioner Urban. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to the next item. Consider purchase of real property. Oh my gosh, located at 137 South Fremont Street. Got property on sale.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Slightly different scenario on this one. So as this board has discussed in closed session, the town was presented with an opportunity to acquire 137 South Fremont Street, which backs up to Stumptown Park. Just for audience reference, this is one of the parcels that town boards have been looking at for decades, as far as if there's ever an opportunity to expand the footprint of Stumptown Park, make it a larger space, it would require this property. So we were very excited when this opportunity came to us, and certainly see tremendous value in moving forward with this sale. It's approximately 0.77 acres in size, and the current property owners, F&M Properties, on top of this being desirable, they were very willing to work with us on some pretty unique payment terms. that allow us to space out payments, and we would really only be looking at $20,000 upfront, and then our first payment would not be due until FY24. On top of that, given the fact that this is related to Stumptown Park, we have the blessing of our town attorney to utilize tourism funds to make these payments in future years, further freeing the general fund from being obligated for this purchase. So tonight we are looking for an approval by the board to move forward with this purchase under the terms outlined in the memo.
Question. It is rental property too as well.
Yes, thank you, Commissioner Whitley. There is currently a duplex on the structure that generates approximately $30,000 gross annually in rental income. The town would begin receiving that revenue as soon as we close on the property.
And Becky, are those units in good shape? Have we inspected them?
We have not. We were assured by the property owner that they were in good shape, and they are currently renting for $12.50 a piece, which is a relatively affordable rate for the area, but it was not something that we pursued.
Okay. I think this makes good sense from a long-term planning sense. If we ever do expand Stumptown Park, we will have this property available. And if we don't expand Stumptown Park, this property certainly is not going to decrease in value, I don't believe, over the next many years. So it's right in the core of our downtown. It's a valuable piece of property. I think we can't go wrong by acquiring it and adding it to our arsenal of real estate. So do we have any discussion, comments, questions, or motions?
I'd like to make a motion that we purchase 137 South Fremont Street from F&N Properties LLC under the terms as outlined in the memo of April 25th presented this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Tufano. Do we have a second? Second by Commissioner Garner. Any discussion? All in favor? All opposed? That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Move on to item 9E, consider sale of real property located on Sam Newell Road, parcel ID 193-19109.
All right, so the last of our real estate items, I think. Before I begin, Mr. Buckley, the upset bid process, did we receive anything by 5 p.m.? Okay, sorry. Okay, I'm sorry, Lord. So as you can see here in the memo, we've already received a $16,000 bid deposit on the 0.86 acre tract that the town owns on Sam Newell Road, near Rice Road. The property did appraise for $320,000, and the buyer has offered that amount to the town. Maureen, can you scroll down? I just want to make sure I get the action item right. So the direction this evening would be to authorize the sale of this property to the buyer. Happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
What's the size of this property?
0.86 acres.
That's an excellent price. Yeah.
I believe Commissioner Urban has to recuse himself.
Yeah, this is not part of that parcel that was had conditions to it, but it is the client that we work with. And so I don't know what he's intending to do with his property, but in light of the fact that he could roll it into the existing parcel or do something like that, I'd like to recuse myself from this conversation.
Mr. Buckley?
That is his intention, as I understand.
It may be, but are you working on this specific?
That specific lot?
Not on this lot, but it on
well, we ever since
you're gonna
that
have to expand a little bit on whether or not you're going to have to be excused.
if he's going to roll it in, we definitely will be involved in it.
It may be, but right now all you're doing is selling it. So that's not a zoning issue. That's not an issue.
Well, as long as you say it's okay, Charlie,
It's
that's
okay.
fine. But I mean, it just felt
but
someone's going to come back and
just
whip me up a
remember
good
this,
one. I know that.
You're under the law to vote.
Okay.
Unless there's a reason to be excused.
Okay.
And I don't think this is a reason to be excused because this is not a zoning issue. This is just a sale of public property.
Recusal denied.
That's a first.
I just
Thank
happen to
you.
be handling it. It's not a zoning issue.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that forward, Commissioner Urban, for consideration.
All right.
That's good.
I've said my piece.
You made disclosure, which is the critical for you,
Okay.
but it's not necessary that you recuse.
Okay, would anybody like to make a motion on this one?
I would. I'd like to make a motion that we authorize the sale of town-owned property at parcel 193191109 on Sam Newell Road for the price of memo dated from J. Kemp on April 21, 2022.
Thank you, Commissioner Whitley. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Garner. Any further discussion? All in favor? All opposed? And there's one where we're not buying, we're selling. So that's good. That passes unanimously. Thank you. We'll move on to item 10, the mayor's report. I do have a few items. One is this past Friday, the 22nd, at the CATS Administrative Center, Charlotte Area Transit System Administrative Center. There was a celebration, a ceremony to unveil CATS electric bus initiative, and I participated in it as a member of the Metropolitan Transit Commission. And it's really exciting. The CATS is going to have 18 buses involved in this effort that are have really a zero carbon footprint. They're really nice. They're looking at two different manufacturers of buses to see how each of them work. One of them is Gillig, the other is New Flyer. I believe Gillig buses are made in California, New Flyer are made in Canada. So they're North American buses, really nice. And we had a really nice ceremony there. There were a lot of politicians and things out, but it was really just a beautiful day, and it's really exciting. And I think it's the intent of CATS to transition their entire fleet over the next 10 years or so. Duke Power is also involved in this initiative, and they contributed substantially to the purchase of the buses. And Duke Power is also transitioning all of their fleet over to electric. And a lot of people are kind of doubtful, but we're actually seeing large scale transition of fossil fueled vehicles over to electricity. So I'm a little concerned about my 74 Dodge, if I'm gonna be able to get gas for it someday, but it was a nice ceremony. If you get an opportunity, these buses have really nice wraps and blue and green color schemes on them with birds and things, and a big electrical cord. A really, really neat thing. So if you get a chance to take a ride on one of those, definitely do it. They're going to be around. Secondly, I made a phone call on Saturday, both to Corey King and Scott Rawls, to congratulate them for the Earth Day for Children event that was held at Stumptown Park. I'm sorry, Squirrel Lake Park. It was just a phenomenal event. I know Commissioner Garner was there, Commissioner Tefano was there, and maybe some others. I didn't see you. It was a really great event, but I've never seen an event of that nature outside of Matthews Alive so well attended. I mean, there were hundreds and hundreds of people out there. And my daughter, as I mentioned earlier, was coming in from Washington, D.C. And when she got home, she said, "What's going on at Squirrel Lake Park?" Because I took me 15 minutes to drive through there. People were scrambling to find places to park. But the park was just packed full of kids. And I know Corey mentioned earlier the safety of the equipment that we have in our parks, and it was certainly getting a workout on Saturday. There were hundreds of kids on all the equipment and just having a blast, lots of laughter, and a lot of really earth-friendly things with environmental efforts and things of that nature. It was just a fantastic event, and I want to congratulate Parks and Rec staff for managing that. It was just awesome. Thirdly, yesterday, I attended a Hindu exhibition at Elan Park Elementary in Charlotte over near Ballantyne. And this was an event that's kind of a prelude to the event we're going to have this coming Saturday by the India Association of Charlotte. But it was an educational event that was really, really informative, where I think we get to learn about other cultures by talking to people. They had 24 stations, 24 poster boards about the Hindi religion and the contributions of Indians throughout history. And it was just really, really neat. The highlight of which is yesterday was my wife's birthday, and they sang happy birthday to her in Hindi. And that was kind of neat. So she was a little embarrassed, but it was a lot of fun. And then finally, I want to mention, as I just did, that this coming Saturday at Stumptown Park from noon to 6 p.m., the India Association of Charlotte is going to come have the festival that they discussed at our last meeting. And I really hope that many of you can make that event. And again, it's a good opportunity to learn about maybe a culture that you may not be familiar with. And certainly, I hope the first of many events. I know Commissioner Tufano is talking about maybe doing an Italian event upcoming at some time, and I think we should do these somewhat regularly. It's just, I think you really learn about other cultures and other people by meeting with them and celebrating and breaking bread, and et cetera. So these are all fun events that are upcoming. And that's all I have for the mayor's report. Thank you. I'll move on to the town attorney's report.
I know you're disappointed, but no report, Mayor.
I'm very disappointed. Town manager report.
No report.
Entertain a motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn, Mr. Mayor, I just want to remind all of y'all, we are very excited at Mount Moriah to be able to have our public service, police, law enforcement appreciation Sunday, this coming Sunday, 9:45. Come hungry. And it's an old fashioned, if you got any old cars you want to put, we got a set up where you can put those, but we're excited to be able to do this and hadn't done it in the last 2 years. So we're looking forward to you all as well too. Thank you, Mayor. Now with that being said, I make a motion, we adjourn.
One more time, what was the time on that?
9:45.
9:45. Yes.
I got a special speaker gonna be speaking now. It's our first time having a female speaker for this event, but I think you'll be excited. I'm not gonna call the name, but I think you'll recognize it when you get there.
All right. Sounds good. Yeah, I will. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that in my mayor's report, but having attended that many of the times that you've had it, it's a great event to our show appreciation for our police and other emergency service workers, and the food is outstanding. So you have a motion to adjourn, I believe, sir? You have a second?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Whitley, a second from Commissioner Tufano. All in favor? All opposed? That passed unanimously. Thank you and good night before 9 o'clock. Woo!